I would say, and of course, the House has passed their budget, the Senate's passed their budget. There's some tax measures that may or may not get passed associated with that. But I would say that, and the governor's extended the session for 1 day to work on the budget, which is Sunday at midnight. I would say the chances of getting a budget through both chambers that the governor agrees to by the end of the day Sunday, I would put at, and by the way, my last prediction was that medical marijuana wouldn't pass, so let's keep that in mind. I would say the chances are about 1 in 20, about 5%. What would you say?
I would say they're probably higher than that. I'll go along with you to this point, Hoppy. I think probably it's uphill to get one on the governor's desk between now and Sunday, but not impossible. Both houses have passed budgets at this point. I suspect what will happen today is one or both houses will take the budget bill passed by the other, insert its own, and go to a conference committee. And you never know. Perhaps conferees will be able to work something out. The Senate budget is in a posture that it'd be easier to pass because I think the House budget, as I understand it, to the extent that it brings new revenue into the equation, would require passage also of other legislation. Our Senate budget does not. Maybe one or two other bills,
but you're right, Charlie, and certainly theoretically, you get together in conference committee, you could do that. The challenge I see is I don't see that pathway forward. I mean, the Senate has said repeatedly since the start of the session, this is the expected revenue. We're going to live within our means, which means deeper cuts to the big three. And the House has said we want to do. We're going to lower the base. We're going to lower the rate and expand the base for the sales tax. And there's one other part in there. It's all running together. But anyway, very different plans. So what could be the pathway forward that the majorities in both chambers could agree to?
I think there is probably a pathway forward. It may be, as you say, not an obvious path or an easy one to find. But I'll tell you this, Hoppy, I have great confidence in Mitch Carmichael and Tim Armstead as being capable leaders, the finance chairs of both houses. And I expect what we're going to see over the next 24 and 48 hours is hard work and effort by everyone to try to find that pathway forward. Maybe there's a way to compromise the differences that exist between the House and the Senate to be able to present something to the governor.
Charlie Trump is with us, as chairman of Senate Judiciary. He's on the leadership team there on the Senate side. The Senate passed a budget that, as I said, holds the line on spending. You expect to collect, $4.1 billion. You guys spend $4.1 billion. There are reductions in there. The dog racing, I'll get to that in a moment. Dog racing money, about $100 million from DHHR and higher education. About $70 million from public ed, but there is a way to recoup that by raising the levy rate at the local level. So you guys have done what you said you were going to do. But having done that, can you now say, we did what we were going to do, but there's no way this is going to pass, therefore we can move on some of these things?
I think that's right if it's true that there's no way that it can pass. I don't accept that yet. I think the budget that the Senate passed is responsible. It's consistent with what many of us have heard from the citizens of West Virginia that they want us to do, which is live within our means. Don't raise a whole bunch of taxes. We have, a fragile enough economy now, the lowest labor force participation rate in the country. So to your point, I think maybe the people of West Virginia will move the governor, and to the extent that it's necessary, the House of Delegates toward our budget.
Charlie, let me switch gears and talk about a couple of the things. Both the House and Senate passed legislation to take the $15 million away from dog racing. That goes into the purse and into the Breeders' Fund. That bill has gone to the governor. The governor has announced he's going to Independence Hall in Wheeling tomorrow, presumably to veto that bill, which means that the money would stay in dog racing and dog racing would continue. If that plays out, then is there time for the House and Senate to override the veto?
There will be if he vetoes the bill while we're still in session. then there would be time to override a veto. I surely hope the governor does not veto it. I voted for that legislation, and I hope the governor will sign it.
Okay, but there is time, if he does veto it, there is time to override. You can do that in the extended session, in a one-day session, or would you do it on Saturday? How would that happen, do you know?
Well, it depends on when he vetoes it. I would assume that, I hope the votes would be there to override the veto. If he does, I will vote to override the veto. But if we're in extended session, even a day for the budget, I believe the Constitution gives us authority to also to override vetoes.
Charlie, another thing, and I think this, boy, did this happen in Judiciary? Did the parental notification change in Judiciary? Was that in your committee?
No, that was in the Senate Health Committee.
Okay, all right, I'll skip that. Let's go to what is likely to happen. Let me go to medical marijuana. As I said at the beginning, I really did not expect that bill would get as far as it did and get passed, but it did. Sometimes things just sort of have a life of their own. I mean, an amendment to pass it got defeated in the House, and then in the Senate it nearly passed health. Then it passes 13-3 in your committee. Then it passes the Senate. So it just kind of builds on itself. Are you surprised that happened, and why did it happen?
Well, I am a little surprised it happened, and if I'm going to be completely honest about it, Hoppy, I wasn't planning on running it in the Judiciary Committee when I came into session this year, and I didn't understand the groundswell of support for it that there is. But there clearly was, in both caucuses, the Democratic caucus and the Republican caucus, and so I was convinced to put it on the agenda at least, let people debate it, discuss it, see what happened with it. And it was, actually overwhelming. And I came to be convinced that it is a fair and decent thing to do. That bill will provide an opportunity for people to use those products for seizure disorders, people who are terminally ill with intractable pain from cancer or other terminal diseases. And I got to the point, Hoppy, where just as a person, I thought, who am I? Who am I to say no to people who can get relief or peace from that if that's where they get relief or peace in those circumstances?
Charlie Trump, Republican Morgan County Chairman of Senate Judiciary. Charlie, always a pleasure.